I want to briefly talk about a new track that I wrote. The title is "The Witness in the Sky is Faithful," and I have two different versions of it. I have this one that's like a card format, like my other one, and then I also condensed it into a 5x7 card, so it's just the front and back. So I think it might be cheaper to print and easier to print and hand out if you don't want the card format, you have a single 5x7. So the witness in the sky is faithful, and it revolves around creation and how God has made himself known through creation, similar to that track about how Barnabas in Acts 14 preaches from creation that God did good and sent you rains from heaven and fruitful seasons, satisfying your hearts with fruit and gladness. Food and gladness. So this is similar with the moon. So the first part, God speaks. I use Hebrews 1. God, after he spoke long ago to the fathers in the prophets in many portions and in many ways in these last days, has spoken to us in his Son, whom he appointed heir of all things, through whom he also made the world. So God has spoken through the prophets, through his Son, and also through creation. The heavens declare the glory of God, and there aren't literal words. But through meditating on the works of his hands, you can know him through the things that he has made. Through these we can know God. When we meditate on his word, the Son, and the created works of God, we can gain understanding of who God is. By observing the visible, we can gain insight to the invisible God. By faith, we can see the unseen God through the veils of his word, his Son, and creation. Like God is spirit, and no one has seen God at any time, but he has made himself known through his word, through his Son, and through creation. And yes, Jesus is the Son of God. He's the Word. The Word was with God, and the Word was God. I'm not saying Jesus isn't God, but I'm saying the Son isn't the Father. There's an invisible God apart from Jesus that we can know through Jesus. No one comes to the Father except through me, the Father being God. But yeah, I'm not saying Jesus isn't God. Hebrews 11:3, by faith we understand that the worlds were set in order at God's command, so that the visible has its origin in the invisible. So because our visible world, our visible creation was spoken into existence by God from the unseen God, like fruit testifies of the tree. A product testifies of the source that it came from. So because the word, Jesus, and creation, they all came forth and proceeded from God. So all of these things we can know, we can gain insight to who God is. So with the moon, Psalm 89, verses 34 through 37. My covenant I will not violate. It shall be established forever, like the moon, and the witness in the sky is faithful. The moon is a witness. It testifies. The moon, being shaped and formed by God, can give us insight to who God is. Being a created work of God, there are ways in which the moon resembles its creator. The moon is faithful, reliable, and true. The moon is a tested mark of time, an improving guide to establish location and paths. The moon is faithful because God is faithful. A faithful moon can only be set in place by a faithful creator. Good can only come forth from good, and faithful can only come forth from faithful. By observing the physical nature of the moon, you can know of the nature of the unseen God. And that's who you need to place your trust in. God, the invisible God who created the moon. Place your trust in the invisible God who the moon testifies of, who the scriptures testify of, and who the Son made known to us. I think Jesus is the only man on this planet that has warrant to say to the woman of Samaria, believe in me. believe me, trust me. I don't think any other man can make that appeal. Like, oh, you should trust me. You should believe in me. Like, our nature is corruptible and fallen, and is only good to the extent that God works through us and in us. Like, if God is able to be a blessing through like pastors and shepherds and the brethren, like any good that comes from them, that's of God. Your faith needs to be in God. Isaiah 26, the steadfast of mind you will keep in perfect peace, because he trusts in you. Trust in the Lord forever, for in God the Lord we have an everlasting rock. Greater than what we can see with the moon. Like, yeah, the moon is a huge rock. It's a huge shield. It keeps the earth stable. But in God, like, greater than the moon is the God who created that rock. Our trust needs to be in the God who created the faithful moon. And also 1 Peter, referring to Jesus, through him you now trust in God, who raised him from the dead and gave him glory, so that your faith and hope are in God. And you could also say, my faith is in Jesus, my trust is in Jesus. Like, he's the mediator between God and man. So then this back part is just a huge appeal to trust in the Lord and not trust in anything else. There's nothing else on earth. There's no other man. There's no other physical created thing, finances, money, your own understanding, the truth that you hold, your obedience. None of these things can you place your trust in. Like, if you have truth, like, truth comes from God. My trust is in God, who sends forth truth and allows me to understand it and lay hold of it. My trust is in him. Like, when you're deceived due to the nature of deception, you don't know it. You don't know you're deceived. Otherwise, you wouldn't, you would turn from that and go to the truth. But because of the nature of deception, you can't, like, trust that everything you hold to be true is true. Like, you could be deceived. So it's like, ultimately you need to trust in God. Like, he's the one that reveals truth. He's the one that allows you to receive it, to understand it, to exercise faith in it, to know him through it. Like, your faith needs to be in God. Like, if you're under a false teacher, typically you don't know it. Otherwise you wouldn't be under them. So, and teachers are good. I'm very thankful for all of the truth and blessings and means that the Lord has provided me through them. But ultimately, you can't put your faith and trust in an under shepherd. It needs to be in the God who works through them and in them for your good. And that if you are under a false shepherd, like, your trust needs to be in God, that he would reveal that and lead you out of that. Jeremiah 17, 5-8. Thus says the Lord, cursed is the man who trusts in mankind and makes flesh his strength, and whose heart turns away from the Lord. For he will be like a bush in the desert and will not see when prosperity comes, but will live in stony places in the wilderness, a land of salt without inhabitant. Blessed is the man who trusts in the Lord, and whose trust is the Lord. For he will be like a tree planted by the water, that extends its root by a stream, and will not fear when the heat comes. But its leaves will be green, and it will not be anxious in a year of drought, nor cease to yield fruit. The under-shepherds we have on earth, the teachers, the counselors, the brothers and sisters, the husbands and wives, and the friends, can all be blessings through which God sends forth grace, truth, comfort, security, protection, help, encouragement, and rest. Yet our hope and our trust can never be in the persons who hold these positions, but in God. They can only be a blessing to us in the extent that God enables and wills them to be a blessing. The entirety of our hope and trust must be in God. Blessed is the man who has made the Lord his trust and not and has not turned to the proud, nor to those who lapse into falsehood. It is better to take refuge in the Lord than to trust in man. It is better to take refuge in the Lord than to trust in princes. God is the source of goodness, righteousness, and truth. Your hope and trust need to be in God for these things. Salvations of the Lord. Given the right circumstance, you can fall into sin and be held captive by its power. Given the right circumstance, you can be led astray by false teachers into darkness, not knowing the one true God. Possessing facts about God isn't the same as knowing God. That's like with the Pharisees. They knew a lot of facts about God, but they didn't know God. They didn't have a union with God. They didn't have a relationship with God, and they were not like God in many ways. So Jeremiah 23. Or kind of like Jonah, like he knew all, God, you are a gracious God, compassionate, slow to anger, and relenting of calamity. Like Jonah knew all of these things about God, but Jonah was not like God. Jonah wasn't compassionate. Jonah wasn't relenting of calamity. Jonah wanted calamity to fall on Nineveh. And he got angry when they repented and God spared them from the judgment that he had declared. So Jonah knew like facts about God, but he had unbelief in a certain, to a certain extent, and a lack of faith. The word that he heard wasn't united by faith, and it didn't bear fruit in himself to have the fruit to be compassionate, to have the fruit of being merciful. So it's a sign of unbelief that, Jonah knew all these facts about God, but wasn't like him and wasn't bearing those same fruit and wasn't doing the deeds of his father, and wasn't seeking to be like God in all ways. And like with Jonah, that was just through self-righteousness, because he was born a Hebrew. He wasn't born into Nineveh, so he didn't have the experience of being born into a country that didn't know God and that didn't have these guards and rails to keep him from certain sins or certain wickedness. It's like if Jonah was born into Nineveh, Jonah would have been exactly like the people of Nineveh. It's not anything in Jonah that makes him righteous. It was the Lord's goodness to him that Jonah was born into the nation of Israel as a Hebrew and was given guards to keep him from entering into sin in forms of wickedness that was prevalent in Nineveh. And it was a mercy of God that Jonah was born into, as a Hebrew. But Jonah doesn't recognize that. He thinks it's of himself, that he's not as bad as other people, but it's the Lord's goodness and mercy that Jonah wasn't as sinful as the people of Nineveh. But he didn't recognize that. So yeah, talks about like false teachers in Jeremiah 23. How long is there anything in the hearts of the prophets who prophesy falsehood, even these prophets of the deception of their own heart, who intend to make my people forget my name by their dreams which they relate to one another, just as their fathers forgot my name because of Baal? So when you have false prophets and false teachers who are teaching according to their own heart, whatever remaining corruption is in their heart, that's going to be manifested in their teaching as well. They're going to interpret the text through their own lens of, remaining sin that they have in themselves. And with every form of false teaching, that is causing the hearers to forget the name of the one true God. God has revealed himself through his word, and when you have false teachers who teach error, that causes people to forget the name of God, that leaves them with an idol that leads them worshiping the works of your own hands, the false teacher, the God that you're crafting, that you're teaching. When you have error and falsehood in your teaching, when that enters the heart and mind of your hearers, and they lay hold of that and believe it to be true and believe this is who God is, they're forgetting the name of the one true God, and now they're worshiping the works of your hands and your words. Yeah, you can't trust in your own works and your own, if God sanctifies you and brings goodness and renews your heart, you can't trust in that. Like that will deliver you in and of itself. Like God is the God of salvation. God is the, like everything good comes forth from God. You need to trust God for any hope of righteousness that you have, or any hope of goodness abiding in your heart. Like in Luke 18 with the parable of the tax collector and the Pharisee. He told this parable to some who trusted in themselves that they were righteous and viewed others with contempt. And then in Psalm 16, 1-2, "Preserve me, O God, for I take refuge in you. I said to the Lord, you are my Lord. I have no good besides you." And I really like the woman of Samaria in John 4, when she was in a predicament where she didn't know where to go to worship. She didn't know like what example to follow. Our fathers worshipped on this mountain, and did you say in Jerusalem is the place to worship? And she didn't know. She had two like competing truths, and she didn't know which one. She wasn't able to like validate them, like trust but verify. She didn't have a way to like verify what was the actual place to go to worship. So when she discerns that Jesus is a prophet, that's like the first question she asks, like, where do I go for worship? And Jesus gives her a third option, worship in spirit and truth. And at this point, she didn't have a way to validate what he was saying. But her hope wasn't in her performance. It wasn't in her obedience. Her hope and trust was in God. Like ultimately, if I'm not going to the right place for worship, if I'm not worshiping correctly, my hope is that God will reveal that and he will move me to worship and obey him according to truth. And she responds to Jesus, John 4:25. The woman said to him, "I know that Messiah is coming, he who is called Christ. When that one comes, he will declare all things to us." Like she didn't have that burden in herself. Like, I need to figure out what's true. My soul depends on it. If I'm not, worshiping correctly, I'm going to go to hell. If I'm not obeying correctly, the Lord is going to condemn me. She wanted to seek out truth, but ultimately, like, her hope was in Jesus. Her hope was in the coming Messiah. When that one comes, he's going to declare all things to us. And if I don't have the truth now, and if my worship isn't acceptable now, well, when he comes and when he declares all things, my trust is in him. My trust is in God. And when that one comes, he'll declare all things. And that's why Jesus came, for this reason I've been sent, to testify to the truth. And that's what he did. He did declare all things. Yeah, so if you ever find yourself in a situation like the Samaritan woman in John 4, not knowing where to go to worship, not knowing who to believe, not knowing what's true, put your hope and trust in God and in his Messiah. Wait on the Lord for an answer. Trust in God that he will make truth known to you. Psalm 16:11. You will make known to me the path of life. In your presence is fullness of joy. In your right hand there are pleasures forevermore. So if you're in a predicament and you don't know what's true and it seems conflicting, or there's like chaos around you and confusion, trust in the Lord. Truth comes from him, and his Messiah is coming, and he's going to declare all things. And if you don't have truth now, trust that when he comes, God will reveal truth to you. You can't trust in your own understanding or trust in your own heart. Like, if you have an understanding of the truth that comes from God, your trust needs to be in God. And just as easily as he has made known truth to you, he can make you forget it. So ultimately, like, your trust needs to be in God, the God of truth, the God who sends forth truth. Truth comes from him. So that's why I really like this. Well, yeah, I really like all my tracks now. I don't like my old ones. And I like it because if people have like a reservation about the scriptures or whatever, it's like, well, you can observe the moon. You can observe it today, tomorrow. It's physical. You can see it with your own eyes, and you can gain enough insight into who God is, to exercise faith in him, to put your trust in him, to have like your confidence in him, and that he will reveal to you more truth. Like, there's truth all around us. And even the disciples, when Jesus was with them, it's like he said all these things to him, but they didn't understand. And he was like explicitly clear. He's like, I'm going to be turned over to the hands of men and the Gentiles and to be trampled underfoot, and they're going to kill me, and I'm going to rise again on the third day. Those aren't his exact words, but it's something along those lines. I'm paraphrasing. And even though he was explicitly clear about what's going to happen, it's like they didn't understand these things, and the meaning was hidden so that they couldn't understand them. So even if you're under a good teacher, like, you still need God to open your heart and mind to understand the things that are being spoken. You could be in the best church, under the best teacher, with the best translation of the Bible, and you can have it memorized. But it's the Lord that gives insight and wisdom and understanding. It's like you need to trust in him that he will also allow you to receive it and to understand it, and to not like be blinded to his glory and his truth that it contains. And that you need you need to receive it in faith so that it will be profitable to you. Yep, so your hope and trust need to be in God. Not in like the word in and of itself. Like even Jesus said, you search the scriptures because in them you think you have eternal life. But these are which testify about me. Like they testify of the Son and they testify of God. Like your hope and trust need to be in the Lord and his anointed, and God and his Redeemer and his mediator. I said in a past video, like there were times when like I was struggling with sin and I was memorizing all these scriptures and it like wasn't working, and I'm like, what am I doing wrong? I'm doing all the steps, but I had my hope in scripture memory. My hope wasn't in the God who delivers you from sin. It wasn't in Jesus who will bring freedom from your sin, who has died for your sin so that you can be forgiven and healed and freed from it and released from it. It was in the means, and it wasn't like ultimately, like if you enter, like there's no, given the right circumstance, you'll fall into any sin. Like your hope needs to be in the Lord, that if you do enter into sin, like he will bring you out of it. And that ultimately your hope needs to be in the Lord, that he will keep you from entering into sin. You can't trust in yourself, in your own righteousness that you have, or your current obedience, or your current circumstance. Like your hope and trust need to be in God. Like he's your keeper, he's your shade. Like in Psalm 121, ultimately he's the source of all of your help, and that help can come through different people and in different means, but ultimately your trust and faith and hope need to be in God. Ultimately it comes from him. So yeah, so I have that track on my website. You can print it if you want. Okay, thanks.